Countdown though, please. Okay.
All right, so this is our second installment of two dudes talking about stuff. So what are your thoughts? What are your, yeah, no expertise whatsoever. So Mr. Lee, what are your thoughts tonight?
So I guess I'm sort of thinking about our people at what is out there in space and beyond. There's, I guess everybody at a point in their life has thought about this, right? And things have happened this past year with in the US having classified documents, a report released, basically saying about unexplained phenomenon, right? Which has brought up questions like Fermi's paradox, right? To examine. So I did a bit of digging around in this, and I was kind of curious, like, why did this report went out? It turns out like Trump actually mandated that you put that on a policy on the COVID relief bill, that the US government had to release a document explaining, talking about UFOs or what's out there. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it was very weird. So are you familiar with like Fermi's paradox?
No, break it down for me.
So again, I'm not an expert in the matters, and this is going to be very layman, not for the whoever's not listening, but more just for myself explaining it. So please give me some credit and a break. So what it is it's the idea when we look at the Earth, right? What we've accomplished in a short amount of time, and the life that's developed, right? Like it's been very quick. And when you factor in the odds of how many other planets out there, they probably developed life in some capacity too. So the idea is like, who's out there, right? And what's fascinating by the Earth is we are like, so the whole entire universe is about like 13 billion years. Earth was not significantly after the Big Bang, but close enough, sort of far enough that there's billions of years for other Earths to come and populate. And the idea is, based on the speed of population that's probable, other species would have done it. Now, the universe is infinitely vast with space, but jumping is not entirely impossible. Like, do you know our closest galaxy to us is Alpha Centauri? Justin, do you know how close that is, out of curiosity?
No idea.
It's 4 light years, right? Which is really not that far. So if you could develop space flight in some minor capacity, like going at even 20% the speed of light, which is not unrealistic, you can get there in 20 years. Now, not every jump is equal to that, but there is some possibilities of a lot of the planets are clustered in the sense. So where is everyone, right? Now, Fermi's paradox presents some ideas that like there's different theories as to why we haven't found it, right? One of them is the great filter. Like at a certain point, something filters us out. And that could be like technology. For example, the higher up the technology chain you go, the more likely you're to invent something destructive versus the likelihood of inventing something beneficial for intergalactic spaceflight. Right? If you look at us as humans, we have the nuclear bomb, right? And we have no way of leaving the galaxy just yet. So that would be an example of the thinking, right? The other one is like wondering, like, is another filter could be like the Goldilocks zone, right? You know, just warm enough, but like that's, I think scientists are more leaning away from that now, just saying it's more about close to, for example, I think there's like, they found life on one of Jupiter's moons, right? But that's like in the middle of like way out there. So anyways, the idea is, why haven't we found anyone? Is it we don't know how? And it's something I've always like wrestled with, right? Do you have any thoughts? I can keep going on.
Why haven't we found what exactly? Other life, or what? What are you? What are you?
Okay. So there's like defining life. It's like, I think what we're really doing is romanticizing what we're looking for. It's like an alien intelligent life's higher in the food chain as us. I don't think we care about finding like microbes and other stuff. We want to find something out there, right? Something you expect in like science fiction, right? Right? Like, I think most people would agree there's probably like life through incidental happenstance, but actual like intelligent creatures, right? Hold on.
Mhm. Well, okay, so there's a couple things here. So the premise that there are other species or life forms out there developing at different rates or similar rates to us. It's kind of an assumption based on probability, but without evidence, right? So the question, why haven't we found it yet? It's also, that question is based on an assumption that there's something to be found.
Do you think the assumption is so unrealistic?
I'm just pointing out that that's an assumption that everyone needs to agree on in order to want to explore this question further, let's say, right? And
Well, let me give you one of the main thoughts.
Ironically, I think this is something, maybe a similar sort of question with regards to the question of existence of God, right? God or gods, right? So, like there's people who believe and people who don't, and there's not really much of a bridge to connect the two.
Okay, well, let me give you some more insight then. Tell me what you think. Because I get what you're saying, right? Like that's a very reasonable position, but I personally lean more towards the probability being accurate, right? Like there's very high probability and like something is afoot why we haven't found it. That's sort of my own personal beliefs, right? And one example I've read, which I kind of like the idea is we share like monkeys, right? We're only 5% off them, right? Genetically. And they're not stupid. They know how to use tools like putting a twig or whatever, sorry, not a twig or whatever, something, a shoot to get ants out of a hole, right? But what 5% on us is accomplished in a short period of time is phenomenal, right? They wouldn't even know anything, right? Except looking at the stars, but we've done a lot. So if we could get an extra 5% somewhere else, intelligence, it makes you think, and I don't think that's too unrealistic, but you could do a lot. So one of the theories of why we haven't found a new one, which I think is interesting, these aren't mine, by the way, is the idea that who cares about us? In the example they use, in the same veins, if you were to walk by a worm, you don't explain yourself to a worm, right? You don't engage with the worm because it's a worm, right? They have no interest in us because we're basically a worm, right? And if you think about, based on the probabilities, what could really happen, it doesn't sound so unrealistic. Like another version of it I've heard is like there could be like a shield over us in the context of like we're like a zoo, right? We're just off to the side and seeing what's going to happen with us. We're like an experiment, not an experiment, but like just passively observing us, right?
Again, like I always am considering the assumptions that some of these ideas are based on, because also kind of assuming that whatever exists out there, if it does exist, they may be functioning or living or being with a totally different set of circumstances and capability, right? Like, I mean, to get a little bit out there, but to consider like even like a sense of time or space, how we perceive those two things can be totally different for this hypothetical other form or being, whatever term you want to use, right? So even like this, the whole like idea that the time and space, and that, for example, you use your example of that we're like kind of like a zoo, that we're being observed by somebody else, right? Like that's based on the assumptions that we have based on our understanding of how our life works.
Yeah, like I believe intrinsically we don't have a way to figure out what's going on. I don't think we have it innate within our brains. We don't have the hardware, or certainly the software or hardware to figure it out.
Well, I think that the irony too is that it may not even be in our best interests to know, right?
Yeah, like
Because
if
like,
we are the worm, like that would be kind of disturbing, I think.
well, I mean, like if you take a look at what are the reasons for religiosity, um, it's because people need a way to figure out or to deal with existence. And that's one potential solution to living with or being able to accept the limitations of life as we know it.
But which is unraveled very interesting over the past while.
What do you mean?
Well, it was religion is basically was like the main real estate for understanding the world and navigating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kings were in charge, divinely appointed, but um yeah, it's just interesting, right? Because like when you have could you imagine when like the microscope discovered like there's things in the water?
Mm.
Like how did like why wasn't that in the Bible, right? It's just like there's like microbes and things floating around.
Mm-hmm.
And even recently, like there's actually like molecules and that fly through the planet. Like, do you know about those?
No.
They fly through space and we can count, they fly through the earth, like kind of like comets, but they're like very small. It's like
Okay.
it's nuts, right?
Yeah.
Um, we're catching these things, but okay, let me shift it a bit because we're on the probability part. But one more, we'll do another controversial, very like non-standard opinion is so I'm very agnostic, right? I don't really believe in a formal God, but I think on a balance of probability that there's more likely to be a God than not.
Okay.
Um, so one area I look at, and again, that's a huge conversation, but let's just look at one area. I'd be curious what you think. Now, this is my own thinking, by the way. I'll shift away to my own ideas now. Is I look at what we've done with robots, right? Like simply using, they're based off a language of 1 and 0. 1 and 0 has basically brought us to the moon. Now, when I look at humans, we are much more advanced in a lot of ways and higher functions, but we're simply based off, instead of 1 and 0, we're based off 4 letters or 4 sequences.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
based on that, it is almost like we are a robot in the sense, right? Like we're programmed, right? We have a genetic, no, we no, it's a fact. We do have a genetic programming. It's
Yes.
just more as that like divine inspired, sorry, the divine created or just like happenstance, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, I look at that and just look around us. It's like, and again, I don't mean the same like this is like 80%. I'm just saying like based on a 50-50 shot, I think it's maybe 51-52, leaning towards a creator in some capacity. I don't know.
Okay.
What do you think?
Um, I mean, I always trend towards like a pragmatic approach, right? So I'm more,
It'd be boring, is what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, that's my particular personality makeup, right? So um
We need to get
I,
Bryant on the show.
yeah, well, we bring him in next time. Uh
Special guest.
uh so like I need evidence, right? I need observable proof of something. Now, if I don't have it, it also doesn't mean that I'm going to deny something, right? So okay, so let's just get down to the nitty gritty. God, okay. Personally, in my lifetime, I haven't had any experience or evidence to suggest there is God. However, I also don't have evidence or observation or experience that there is no God. So I think in that aspect, I would be probably a pretty true agnostic. But that interpretation that I have, I apply that to everything. So that's my response to you is I can't really give percentages 51, 52. I think this would be a point at which I'd abstain right? I'd abstain from the vote. I'd just say,
And keeping in mind, like God doesn't necessarily have to be like a judo Christian, whatever that phrase is, right? It could be simply be someone like us colonizing a distant planet and seeing what happens, right? That's sort of the possibility, not some like omnipotent individual.
but I mean, the ability to create to me sounds pretty omnipotent, right?
Well, we're getting close to our work with robotics in 10, 15 years. We could create something similar to a human, right? With real emotions, right?
Mm.
I don't know how close we're gonna get, but like, I don't know, in a sense, is that God with us?
Well, I think that we really need to test out exactly what we're referring to.
I knew you're gonna do that. You have this pragmatic approach where you go back to definitions.
Well, I think that's that, because without an agreement on understanding, then it's almost like we're not even speaking the same language. Like there's a total communication breakdown. So that's why.
This is fair.
And
Yeah,
I
like
think
an omnipotent God, I would still give it. I'm a probability person still, 51, 52.
all right.
See, for me, okay, so like last questions is then we can probably wrap it up, is the Big Bang. Now, a lot of our energy is focused on the Big Bang, right? Coming up, measuring this distance, but like, I have no idea. Like, what do you think even caused the Big Bang? Just like, it's a weird thing to me to think about. Like, oh, it's a Big Bang. We're expanding. We're shrinking. To me, it sounds like something out of like a sci-fi movie. Like all of a sudden, all the materials for creation shows up in this one spot. Like it explodes, right? It goes out, right? See, for us, I don't think we have the conceptual ability to like understand this. I don't think we can even come up with like a realistic answer. Like if you think, like for example, talking to someone about time, right? Because we know we have a problem with time, because time can theoretically would go infinitely backwards as forwards, but that doesn't work, because obviously that in our concepts and understanding of time, it would have to bend or do something, but even that is still like beyond funky. I think we have a fundamental hardware glitch where we can't comprehend it, so we bend time to sort of come up with a temporary solution. But to me, it sounds like woo-woo science. What do you think? Sorry, I gave you two different points, so you can pick one: the Big Bang or the conceptualization problem, or mash them together.
Well, I think here's my gut sort of reaction. I think that a fundamental part of what we're experiencing here is random, and we do our best to try and make it less random. But I think that there's potentially a fundamental sort of tenet of our being here on the planet is it's random. So, that we're born to the parents that we have, and that we come into this world at a certain time and place. There's a lot of element of randomness to that, and as we live our lives, there's just further and further forces of randomness that happen. And I think a lot of human activity and energy is devoted to reducing randomness, even though it's kind of like a fundamental principle of what we are experiencing together. So that's my answer with regards to Big Bang. The randomness is there. And then, in terms of explaining, we talk about conceptualizing our experiences and how good things happen and bad things happen. That there's also randomness that's at play there. So, I mean, there's a randomness there we see on your screen.
Do you think our audience is asleep?
What audience? That's the question.
That's what she's thinking. That's good. All right. Should we wrap it up?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So that's the conclusion of installment 2 of two non-expert dudes talking about stuff. So any final words there, Lee?
The truth is out there.
How about this? A truth is out there. Some truths are out there.
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. All right. Until next time. All right. All righty. Good night.